記得講英文嗬。
係啊，你記得俾我 share。嗯
係，Welcome everyone. Let's just do a silent meditation for a few minutes. Wait for the other student to show up.
Bác sĩ好，你哋師兄好。
Okay. A big welcome to Venerable De Hong. Once a month on the first Tuesday of every month, Venerable De Hong will be spending an hour with us with the Dharma talk and then meditation. So today's topic is the five aggregates. So I think that is a concept that has no parallel in the Western world. In fact, I believe that when we talk about Buddhist psychology, this is the key. It's
，yeah，
actually understanding how the Buddhists view our existence. That is just not in a body and a brain. That when we talk about Buddhist psychology, it doesn't stop with the brain. In fact, we believe deeply that the trouble, the spiritual or mental trouble that we're in, the suffering, so to speak, doesn't is not in the brain. It's something much deeper. So that I think is the key difference between what one might call the Eastern approach to psychology versus the Western approach to psychology. So with that, I welcome Venerable De Hong, and I'll turn the podium over to the Venerable.
thank you, thank you, Danny. Um, Good evening, everyone. So tonight, we will be discussing the topic of five aggregates. Um, just a bit in the Western in Christianity, um, they speak of the body and soul. But in as opposed to in Buddhism, we don't have the concept of soul. We when we refer to someone, we use the five aggregates. That's one thing, and also this got me to thinking that with the concept of with the discussion of self my and not self, I think we cover not self last month. So when we look at the five aggregates, it is important to recognize that there is not a self to look for when we look at this human being. When we use self, it's basically a conventional label per se. I just want to explain that a little bit so that you guys are aware of that. But before I talk about that topic, I just want to share a little bit of my prison work. But it's not. But this has to do with trauma and the war and war. What I'm showing to you guys, the these three slides is about a guy in his name is Mason. Uh, he's a Buddhist and he wanted actually to be a Buddhist monk, but right now he's in jail somewhere in Florida. He wrote to our university, a university of the West, but no one, would correspond with him. So I took the initiative to write to him. So he wrote to me. So we corresponded, and I found out that he's in jail right now, but he has been in and out of jail for most of his life, or for some time in his 40 years. Right now he's 40 years old. he spoke of his father, who was a Vietnam vet. Now, I don't know if his dad is still alive. His father went to Vietnam, and when he came back from the war, he met his mom. We will see her name. Um, she had, I think, some kind of mental health issue as well as substance use, and meaning smoking and drinking. And then that's how he was born in that circumstance. But anyway, we can quickly go through this. Um, so this report was done, I believe, in 2020 by an attorney in Colorado when supposedly he was there. Um, he is a Buddhist. Um, Now here is the part that his dad's name was Richard. His mom, Kathy. So his dad returned to Georgia, and that's where he was born. But here it said that by the time he was 6 years old, his parents constantly fight, I guess, argue, I would say. It's not clear whether this is verbally fighting or physical. I don't think it's physical fighting. I don't know. So one day when he was 6 years old, his mom just took him and ran away. And so he didn't see his dad for a few years. He also recognized that, he also stated that his dad was supposed to visit but never showed up. And also oh, um, his mom later on also met another person who was also a Vietnam vet. Anyway, so for Mason, besides being born to parents with his father was having PTSD with experienced trauma from the Vietnam War, which probably didn't get treated, and his mom was having mentally ill issues and substance use. Let me see. I didn't post everything. There was time that his mom was crying, was drinking and crying to sleep, alcohol, and she was also smoking. And there was time that the cigarette butts burned the sofa. He had to use water to water it down. So here's someone like him being born to this kind of circumstance. So that's in a way trauma, and kids who are born to parents with this kind of issue, they are so vulnerable they're not able to deal with stress, and this has been proven by research. So that was why, I mean, that's one thing, right? And also when his mom kidnapped him, so he felt also, or when his dad did not show up to visit him, he felt a sense of abandonment. He also, as a kid, witnessed his parents fight, arguing, let per se. That is domestic violence. So someone like that, chances are this person would end up in prison. And this is what I have seen in the people that I worked with for the past 11 years. Actually, in 1983, when his parents divorced, his mom was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Here it said she smoked and drank to sleep. Here's my question, my observation, right? The Vietnam War officially ended in 1975, even though I think the Paris Accord signed in 1972. That was the unofficial end of the U.S. withdrawal from Vietnam. but the U.S. military did not completely withdrew from Vietnam until April of 1975. So here, the trauma of the war still affects some of our Vietnam vets today. Their adult children and possibly their grandchildren. The thing is, I am not sure. I don't think that the U.S. government or Congress is proactively addressing this issue. And the other thing is, how can the private sector help, or should they? Because otherwise, we are going as a society, we are continue to suffer, right? Kids, people born with two parents who have issues, they will have issue on their own, and they will inflict harm onto their neighbors or the surrounding, and we as a society is the one that will suffer. And so that's the Vietnam War. What about the other wars that the U.S. has had involved, right? Let's say the Korean War, and then the Afghanistan War, and the Iraq War, and all these wars that our vets who get sent there, and when they came back, and if they're not careful, if they are not helped, or they didn't know how to seek help, then they continue to harm themselves as well as people around them. Almost every prison that I visit, I ran into a vet. So you guys know, I also correspond with a lot of the veterans, because they are interested, because they have been exposed to Buddhism and meditation, so they have an interest in learning more about meditation. So I just want to throw it out there just so that you guys are aware of this issue. It's an ongoing issue. So what are the 5 aggregates? They are form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And I use some of this is the book, is one of those sources that I used. I also have some other sources that I put at the end of this presentation. So the English term is the aggregates, but in Sanskrit is the 5 skandhas. In Pali is the 5 khandhas. In another term for aggregates is hips. These are the 5 components of a human being, meaning our physical body is form, and then of this body because we have the brain, so we have consciousness. So out of this body and consciousness, they give rise to feeling through our contact, and then through our senses we perceive things, and we give it labels. We make meanings out of our perception. And then volition or mental formation is our mental constructs when we perceive something. So basically the Buddha said, when people ask him, like, who am I? Like, what is this body? And the Buddha would never answer them. He would say that when it comes, he would bring up the 5 aggregates, and when people refer to the self, he would explain the not self. When we dealing with our physical pain, our feelings, our let's say our emotions, even though it's that indirectly implied, the statements that we need to make is that it's not mine, he is not me, he is not myself. When he discussed or explained the term not self. So according to Thich Nhat Hanh, these 5 components or elements, they flow like a river in every one of us. And the river of form, which is the body, river of feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Or they can also be referred to as bundles. That's a term that Thanisaro Bhikkhu used. And they always flow together when we look within this body and consciousness. There is not a self. They are empty of a self. The self does not exist in here. But at the same time, these 5 components, they exist together. They cannot exist independently. So this helps us to answer the 3 questions that the Buddha always bring up in his teachings. Is that what is my suffering, or what is my stress, and what are the causes, and how can I bring an end to the causes of my suffering or my stress? And notice that when everything that we do, we speak, we think, there is always behind it, there is an intention. We need to be aware. And I use the 5 circles. I guess I guess I could draw the 5 rivers, but I think the 5 circles makes more sense. They overlap each other, meaning that because of our body and consciousness, and from our consciousness, it gives rise to our mind. And from that, and through our senses, we have feelings, we are able to feel whatever it is through our senses, the 5 senses as well as our mind. And then, we perceive things, objects, ideas through also our 6 senses. And then from that, our mind direct us to react or respond or to do things, and that's volition. And they are interconnected, mutually affecting each other. So basically, form is this body with our 6 senses. In Buddhist psychology, we have 6 senses, not 5. They are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And the thing we need to be mindful when it comes to this body is that it's constantly changing, renewing itself. If you look at our body, I mean, it also depends on how long we live, but that, let's put that aside. For those of you with hair, I don't have hair, right? Because I'm a monk. At least 100 pieces of hair fell off. And each hair is replaced every 2 to 7 years. Our nails, fingernails, is being replaced every 6 months. Every 2 to 4 weeks, our outer layer skin being replaced. The cells in our stomach lining is also being renewed every 2 days. Especially because of the food that we eat. If you eat a lot of spicy food, it's going to be faster. The cells that make up our skin is being replaced every 2 to 3 weeks because this is how, as the main protection against the environment. Our red blood cells last about 4 months. So our red blood cells constantly being made, same as our white blood cells can last from a few days to a little over a week, right? And then the problem is that we can't get rid of our fat cells easily. They last for at least 10 years, so we have to be mindful of that, especially for those of us as we get older, because that's why we put on weight easily. So be mindful of that. And our bones are being replaced every 10 years. And also every 15 years, our muscles are being replaced. Supposedly, our brain cells don't regenerate. However, studies have shown that the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory, can regrow, meaning that, let's say, our veterans, when they suffer trauma, when they went to the front line, they suffer trauma, it actually affected because that's major stress, and it affected their hippocampus, meaning thinning out. But when they meditate through mindfulness meditation, it can actually regrow the gray matter on the hippocampus and also the thalamus. So, and also the connections or the communication between our brain cells are constantly changing or rewire. When we meditate, our brain cells actually rewire. That's why especially our prefrontal cortex. So keep that in mind. The one thing here is that our tooth enamel is never replaced. The lenses of our eyes are with us forever, and also half of our heart is with us from birth to that. That's why it's not easy for us to replace our hearts. So that's the form. So here, Chen Yihan said, when we practice mindfulness, using mindfulness as think of it as light shining on this body, just so that we can take a close look at this body, so we don't attach to this body. We don't have to worry about it. That's how the body is constantly changing. We need to accept the body as it is and know how to care for our physical health. And also used mindfulness to be aware of our positions, standing, sitting, walking, lying down, or when whatever activity that we do in each moment. So that's what the form of the body. Now comes to feeling. Feeling is when we perceive something, we feel through our senses, right? We feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But for the most part, we feel pleasant or unpleasant. We rarely feel neutral. And we don't notice that until we meditate for quite some time, then we'll be able to recognize that. And that's from what I read from Bhikkhu Anna Lao's book. But feeling is primary, and it leads to emotion, which is secondary, meaning the physiological changes as a result of our feeling. And what it is that when we feel something we either like or dislike, and depending on that, that's how we expressed our feeling, which is emotion. And that also, our emotion, it also depends, it is a combination of perceptions, feelings, desires, beliefs, especially religious beliefs, appraisals, and physiological arousal, as well as because of our traumatic experiences. I think I need to include that. Emotion can be expressed verbally or through or non-verbally. So through mindfulness meditation, which is also mindfulness of feeling, which is the foundation of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it helps us to recognize our feeling, embrace it, and express it through emotion. Then perception. Perception is when we, through our senses, we identify, we label it. Let's say we looked at a puppy or a dog through our eyes, through our consciousness. We label it, oh, that's a pet, that's a dog, or that's a cat. That's our perception. We could also use our perception wrong depending on our past experiences. Let's say we have a negative experience with someone, then when we of a different ethnicity, and when we see another person similarly, we could, if we're not mindful, we could also have misperception about the person that we just meet. So with mindfulness, it helps us to discover our errors or our bias. The thing to keep in mind is that perception and feeling do not create karma. when we do not react to them. Let's say we feel angry. When we are mindful of that, we sit with it, we don't create negative karma. But when we get mad, we just scream and yell, or we start hitting people, then we create negative karma. Even let's say we have the desire to, let's say, drink or something, right? If we're mindful of that desire and not react upon it, then we don't go to the store and buy a six pack or a pack of cigarette. That's what I mean when here, and this is from the Buddha. When I say feeling and perception do not create karma, especially negative karma. So our feeling can be created, can arise, can be generated through our six senses. So when you feel good, notice that why is it, or where does that come from? When you listen to music, you feel good. That is through your hearing consciousness, through sound, right? So when you practice mindfulness, you're able to recognize why you feel good. But those kinds of feelings through your senses are what we call the mundane pleasant feeling. I think I will talk about that one day. Then mental formation, volition, meaning that our mind direct us to do good or bad or neutral activities. That's what mental formation is. And mental formation or mental factors, they can be wholesome or unwholesome depending on the activity, but it depends on what we cultivate. It depends on what's in our mind, and this is what is responsible for our karma. So in terms of mental factors, and that's what mental formation is based on. There are 51 mental factors. I'll just quickly list some of them. You guys can look at the slides and go through it, or you can get the book and read through it. Just to have a better understanding. The first 5 are what we call universal, which means that everyone has it: contact, attention, feeling, perception, volition, and that applies to everyone. And that's why it's called universal. Particular means that it depends on the person, right? Not everyone can be mindful. Not everyone is able to concentrate pretty well. Not everyone is able to have insight if they don't practice, if they don't reflect. Those are particular because they depend on individuals. And then there are I think 11 wholesome mental factors: faith, inner shame, shame in front of others, absence of craving, equanimity, vigilance, non-harming, diligence, absence of hatred, absence of ignorance. And that is the opposite of the unwholesome. And unwholesome has primary and secondary, and I'll let you guys go through them. Anger is actually secondary unwholesome. So know that hatred is the primary unwholesome mental factor. And then there are the 1, 2, 3, 4 immediate mental factors. And these factors affect our behavior. They also affect our perception, and then they also can affect our feeling. And if we are not mindful, then we continue to create negative karma. So these are the seeds that store in our unconscious mind. And with mindfulness meditation, we are able to cultivate the wholesome mental factors. That this is what Thich Nhat Hanh meant, and this is precisely my point. Then we have consciousness. Consciousness just recognize something without perceiving it. Let's say when you're sleeping, someone poke at you, you're aware of it, but you didn't perceive it yet. and there are 6 types of consciousnesses as part of our as a result from our brain. Now, there's also difference between consciousness and mindfulness. Consciousness is that we are conscious of everything. Mindfulness is a particular degree of and strength of awareness. So with meditation, our awareness is getting stronger. That's mindfulness. And here it's also said mindfulness is a spiritual faculty that gives us a sense of being in charge of our mind. So and not allowing the 5 hindrances that drag our mind to the past or to the future. That is mindfulness, or a degree of awareness. So, and with that, that's all I have. And tonight we'll be meditating on equanimity. Eventually, I will use Sharon Salzberg's book to discuss, to share with you guys loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So let's get ready and meditate. So let's take your posture, whether you are sitting, standing, or lying down, or even walking. But first, let's take some deep breaths to relax first. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. And relaxed, remind yourself to relax. And it helps to let go of your thoughts, planning, fear, worry, even anxiety. And stay with the breath. Once you're done, then breathe normally through your nose. Make sure that your posture is proper. Allow yourself to smile gently. Notice how you feel when you smile and how that feeling gives rise to the physiological sensations in the body. And right here, this is what you notice, your emotion. When you're meditating, your emotion is at the baseline because you're not reacting to your feeling. When you are laughing, ha ha ha, that's you are expressing your emotion. But right now, you're aware of your feeling and the sensations in your body, and that's it. Just notice how you feel next. Let's do the sense door practice. First, notice your environment. The room temperature. Check in with your mind. See how busy it is and restless. Your feeling, your emotion, your attitude, your mood. When you are mindful, all of this are in check. They are under control. Then your sense of hearing in your surrounding. Smell and taste. These three senses, when you're meditating, they are at rest because there isn't a whole lot to react to that can trigger you. Then your sense of touch in the body, it's being aware of sensation, tension, or tightness that is constantly taking place and changing throughout your body. The sensual practice helps you to stay grounded and centered, or reset, so you don't get distracted easily or feel overwhelmed even when you are being triggered by one of the senses or by your sense objects. Then let's quickly scan your body. See if there's any tension throughout from head to toes. Your forehead, make sure that is relaxed. Your chest, any tightness. Your tummy, your lower abdomen, your neck and shoulders. Lower back, your hips, your knees, your feet, your hands. See how you can be grounded and centered. Then bring your awareness to the breath and practice concentration by just paying attention to your in-breath and out-breath. Ignore thoughts, ignore noise in your surrounding, and be 100% with the breath. You see a flow of thoughts continuously comes and goes. You don't have to react to them. It helps to smile, to make it interesting for your mind to stay with the breath longer. You see that you have no control over the thoughts that come up, but you do have the power of awareness to let them go, not react to them, not engaging with them. That's your power. And your intention is to not react to them. You actually cultivate mindfulness and concentration at the same time. When you are fully present with the breath. Let's move on and practice equanimity. Equanimity is a state of mind that is balanced, unshakable, and vigilant. It allows you to deal with everything that you are facing, be it chaotic, be it out of control, but you can still maintain this unshakable state of mind to deal with them, to get through them. And that comes from your practice. So as you are sitting, you can repeat some of the following phrases. May I accept things the way they are. May I let people be for who they are. May I not be disturbed by the comings and goings of all events. May I understand the arising and ceasing of all phenomena. May I be open, balanced, and peaceful. Just keep repeating these phrases to maintain a balanced state of mind, to let go of your desire to control things that are out of your control. And when you realize that you cannot control anything and people, come back to the breath. Notice the peace when you let go, that everything must be under control. May I accept things the way they are. May I let people be for who they are. May I not be disturbed by the comings and goings of all events. May I understand the arising and ceasing of all phenomena. And may I be open, balanced, and peaceful. Just keep repeating these phrases. Allow them to sink into your subconscious mind, to become your new reminders. So that when you want to control everything, you let go and allow the practice to become your new habit, so that you know what to do. You come back to the breath. Maintain your peace of mind, and that's it. Let's sit in silence for the next couple minutes. Just continue to practice equanimity. Let's check in with your mind, see how settled, how clear it is, that is balanced, open, and peaceful, that you feel calm and peaceful and still loving, letting go of control. Your emotion, your attitude, your mood. Check in with your body, your posture, and notice the qualities of mindfulness, concentration, patience, and equanimity that you just cultivated. With that, I hand it over to Danny. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. So the question is, how do we apply the learning that we have today towards, not necessarily solve our problem, but towards solving a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, first of all, just kind of summary of what the five aggregates, or the in Pali it or is called the five skandhas,
Mm-hmm.
or other people have different word for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the five skandhas as this is my way of doing it, just like it's as if we have like five funnels. Funnels, you take something and then it becomes something else.
Mm-hmm.
So each of the aggregates are like a funnel that takes one medium to another. So when we talk about the form, if you think of it as a funnel, is that it takes physics and then mix it with the physiology. So the physics are the outside world, the light, the sound, the touch, the smell, the taste, and then combined with our physiology, which is our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our body, and so forth. All together is our physical existence. That's the form.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's called. That's everything, both inside and outside, that are physical, is in that form scanner. Now, what the form scanner does is that it takes the physics and then using our physiology, and the outcome of that is basically neurology. It's really the sensations in the body, how we interpret the outside world and creates um, um, neural in our body. And
Mm-hmm.
so you use the word feeling. Sometimes when I explain it, it's hard to use the word feeling, because usually when we say feeling, is that we already assign a value to it. Whereas the second standard is before we assign value. It's really before we assign. So it's I think about the way our body it works, is that every one of our sensors, whether it's eye, the ears, the nose, when it interacts with outside world, it generates electrical signal, and then all the nerve ending goes to our spine. So it's just sensation. We haven't got as far as feeling yet. But then the third scanner is the one that we actually assign value, and that's when all the nerve ending get collected on the spine and delivered to our brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's the extent that we understand our existence from the Western perspective. The Eastern perspective, whether it's yogis or the Buddha or the Tao, they go beyond that. They go beyond our physical existence to more of a conscious level or spiritual level. And so the other scandals talks about how how our mind works, and creates which is a volition, and then also leave an imprint, which we call the karma. But that's beyond the Western understanding,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think to the extent that people might be interested in what we call the Buddhist psychology, is that they might be interested in these extra dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
They're allowing themselves to open up to these extra dimensions. Because if they're not, they just want to focus on the physical existence, which are the body and the physics and a brain and nothing else, then they don't really need to. They won't really need to. We don't need to have this conversation. We don't. The Buddhist psychology, in that sense, doesn't really help anyone. It's when they're
Mm-hmm.
open to the possibility that our existence are beyond the physics, the physiologies, and the neurology, that this conversation become interesting, right? And so, in that sense, it reminds me of the 12 steps program, but just in a different context. Because the first step is honesty, you know, and this is what you do when you're in the prison, right? And I get a chance to go with you in November, visiting the place that I visited before with you, and allow me to get back into doing volunteer work in the prison, which I have stopped since the pandemic. But one of the things that we do with the inmates, the incarcerated individuals, is honesty. Let's talk about why we're here, not necessarily the crime that someone commit that end up them being in prison, but more like the lie, the trauma that they had since they were a child. But being very honest about it and talk about it. And this is probably something that the incarcerated individuals had never had a chance to do that, because they don't like to do that. This is the line of defense. They don't like to reveal that much of themselves or any of themselves. So, but the first step is honesty. Just talk about it. Um, Talk about the trauma they're growing up, and all that. And then the second step is hope. Now, in the context of the 12 steps as practiced in Christianity, they talk about God. They talk about God. And but rather than talk about God, which is external deity, one can talk about what's in within us, the God within us, which are the extra dimensions, basically, right? I mean, so when you pray to God, you're praying into an existence beyond human. And so it's not that different than to say, hey, maybe the way to solve a problem is to go much deeper in us that are beyond our physical existence. So in that sense, step two is very similar. It's hope. Hope that there is a better solution. And then the third step is faith and courage. So it's not that different. It's really not that different, just exploring along the way, right? And in the end, pick up some skills, and one of the most important skills is mindfulness. How do you anchor your mind on your breath?
Mm-hmm.
Or in our practice, how do you anchor on a body? So when these bad emotions come, whether they're hate or violence or jealousy or whatever, you don't let that become you. I think that was what Tina Turner said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to let the negative emotions, negative energy become you.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you should do that is to have some skill to anchor your mind. It's no different than, when you're in the middle of a hurricane, you're in the middle of a big ocean. You gotta drive the boat somewhere and anchor your boat, right? So you don't get engulfed by the storm. Very similar,
Mm-hmm.
very similar. Well, so we didn't finish yet, right? Did we?
I
We
think we
we did
did.
not. Okay, all right. So we finished five aggregates. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
we could go on for 5 years if we want.
I know, but like, we only do it once a month, so I feel, I mean, I put all the references there. People who are interested, they can go into get the book and look into the other websites.
Yeah, I think that's really our purpose, is
Correct.
get people exposed to different aspects of our learning. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Mhm.
That's really excellent. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me turn off the outside. And anyone who has any comments or questions, feel free to put that on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere. Okay.